All right. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to pursue the conversation with you. Jolien, I will start with you. Jolien Walhof, you are part of Waterbear. So maybe for the audience, you can explain what Waterbear is and the vision and the genesis.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jolien. I'm the Impact Director of Waterbear. And Waterbear is a global impact media network using storytelling to drive change. The easiest way to explain this is we have three parts in our business. We're a producer, we're a distributor, and we're also a campaigner. So we produce short films, mainly documentaries, that really sit in that intersection of entertainment and impact. We produce them together with a bunch of organizations, with nonprofits, with activists, with different filmmakers. So that's that part. But we're also distributing the films. So we have our own app, we have our own web, we have our own TV channels and our social media channels. And we offer all of the films and all of the documentaries for free. Always for free, no advertisement. This is a really important part from our business. We want to make sure that all those important stories around the climate, around nature, around biodiversity are accessible for everyone and that it's not behind a paywall. And the third part is we're a campaigner. Woo! Yeah. The third part is we're a campaigner. So we're using really films and storytelling as a tool for change. Ultimately, our mission is to get as many people on board and really driving that collective action. So it doesn't stop with the film. The film is a tool, but we really try to then connect as much films as possible with relevant causes, with relevant campaigns, with relevant nonprofits, so that after you watch something, we give people the tools to act. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about us.
What is the vision behind? Who is behind this, and what is it that it tried to resolve?
Yeah, I mean, Waterbear started 3 years ago. A bunch of passionate people came together that really wanted to use storytelling in a different way and to drive change. We started off more as sort of the media would call us a Netflix for nature. But that's not really our story. We started more as maybe a documentary streaming platform with a lot of nature documentaries, but we're pivoting from that. So we're testing with a lot of different formats. We know and we see that the traditional documentary storytelling is not enough to engage a broader audience. We need to engage, we need to test different formats, different ways of storytelling. So that's one part. And ultimately, the mission is really that collective action. So we want to get as many people on board to be part of the solutions.
Can you take us through a typical campaign or film to produce or something that worked pretty well for you?
Yeah, God, good question. So I think one example where we try to bridge, sort of go away from the traditional documentary storytelling and bridge it with cultural and relevant spaces is a documentary film that we produced last year. It's called Broken Wings. It's only 6 or 7 minutes long. And the film was really to create more awareness around bird poaching in Southeast Asia. But instead of talking about that story as in this is what's happening in Southeast Asia, this is the problem, there's actually no talking in the documentary. It's purely music. And you see sort of the journey from a bird in the forest to somewhere in a cage at someone's home. We work with quite a famous composer and pianist called Ludovico Einaudi. If there's any people from Italy in the room, they will definitely know him. And so we try to work with bridging and bringing together music and impact. Because Ludovico has a lot of fans. A lot of people love his music. But maybe those people are not really engaged yet with climate or nature or biodiversity. And so how can you play around with different formats and with music or with animation or with docufiction even, like mixing the formats up to engage a broader audience and not just the ones that are already interested.
It's been 3 years.
Yeah.
So you share with us one of the lessons, but what are the other lessons learned into this journey of you? Because you joined almost at the beginning.
Yeah, 2.5 years ago. And yeah, in a startup, it's interesting. Everything changes every week. So many learnings. I guess one thing that maybe to start off what didn't work is that we tried and experimented with using animation and humor to talk about the topic of deep sea mining. A very important topic, but also a very scientific topic, and like it's quite hard to like engage people with this topic, especially if you are not in the ocean space. You might not know about it and not know like what's on stake actually very urgently right now. So we wanted to like pivot and try a little bit with, okay, could we test this with an animation and like use humor, and it's a little bit of a Rick and Morty style, and would that work? And you know, it worked to get different people on board. Like we definitely reached different audiences, but we also tried to use the film as a tool at different like policy events, and that didn't really, that style didn't really work there. But it's interesting. We're testing sort of across different audiences what works, what doesn't work. And I think a positive learning is you know, it's really, the topic that you talk about is really important, but equally as important is how you produce it, like both from like who is telling the stories, but also doing the productions as sustainable as possible. So
it's the consistency.
Exactly, it's the consistency. So impact is really embedded throughout. So we, and that's one of our key values as well. We don't fly people around the world to talk about climate change, because that will be a bit ridiculous. We really work with local people on the ground, with local filmmakers, giving them the opportunity. Unfortunately, the film and documentary industry is quite a privileged industry. It's dominated by it's dominated by white males. And if you're a female, and especially a female of color, it's really hard to enter that industry. And ultimately, documentaries are sort of truth tellers and shifters of culture. So it's important to also look at that element.
Sure. And what are the other challenges for your work today?
I think the biggest challenge is still to get as many people as possible to get into the climate movement. Obviously, everyone here is already super interested in one shape or form, and is already aware. But we need to reach the people who are not here today, and we need to reach a wider audience to really get that action at scale. So I think we also live in a bit of a communications crisis at the moment. I think climate communications is not really working. It's very scientific, it's very abstract. There's a lot of misinformation, there's information overload. You get people that are completely overwhelmed by the information. So how can we make it more accessible and engaging, and bring more people into the conversation?
I understand that you are also understanding that, and it's good to have this conversation here. You are also working more and more with companies, finding not only a new model for the business model of the company, but also it's a way for you to have more impact. Can you tell us more about that? How you work with companies?
There's two ways how we work with companies. So first of all, we do see there's a lot of responsibility. No, not responsibility. There's a lot of power that an individual can have, especially when we come together, but it's definitely not on the individual. Like, it's not the pure responsibility, or it's not the fault, or like individuals shouldn't feel guilty about like what's happening. They could be part of the solution, but we don't believe it's the responsibility of an individual. We feel it's all of us together. Policymakers, governments, and brands have a big responsibility as well. We work with brands on two sort of streams. Brands that really share the same, and organizations that share the same mission and same values. We work with them through a production model. But it's not the story about the brand that we show, it's really the story that needs to be told, and that the brand and organization really supports. So that's one way.
So it's like intelligence services learning.
Yeah, it's the production, it's the messaging, it's like how do you talk about these topics, it's the impact campaigning around it, it's all of that. And it's mostly with companies who are maybe already quite far on the journey, or are maybe social enterprises, or companies that have a very strong sort of sustainability mission. Then there's another track for maybe companies that are maybe not as far yet, or want to use storytelling in a different way. And that's using storytelling to drive internal transformation. So we're going to pilot with a very different kind of e-learning approach, and integrating films and content as part of an e-learning experience to educate a lot of employees at companies at scale. So around sustainability, circularity, a lot of e-learning offerings out there can be maybe a little bit corporate or dry, and we're trying to mix the use of films as well to make it way more engaging. So it's also working with the bigger organizations, but then educating more the workforce and the employees through an e-learning solution. Or we could organize film clubs, for example. We would curate the right documentaries and films relevant for the business, and invite everyone to the discussion, invite the filmmakers, the non-profits, to really, after you've seen a film, as you know, with your company or with your team, to really go deeper into that discussion.
Great, thank you. Alexandre, you are the deputy head of fiction at ARTE. Even though I guess the audience is mostly European, maybe you can tell us more about where ARTE is today in terms of broadcast and strategy.
Sure. Hello to everyone. ARTE is we define ourselves as a European public broadcaster. So we're pretty young as a traditional broadcaster. We've been created in 1992, thanks to the political will of two gentlemen, François Mitterrand and then Helmut Kohl. They wanted ARTE to reunion the youth of France and Germany after a long history. And I think it was really the first step of something very unique. We are the only broadcaster to be binational, with the aim to talk about democracy, to cross boundaries, to try to understand another culture, and to do it with a lot of humanism, which is really a strong value of the channel. So nowadays, we are more European than before and than ever, I would say. We're still a traditional broadcaster on one hand, with what we call the channel. But also, we created a platform in 2020, which is totally free and open to anyone. It's a free VOD platform for all our content in Europe. And most of all, it's a free environment in the sense it's a green environment. You don't have to log in. There's no password. It's open to anyone. And then you can access in 6 different languages all over Europe, taking into account the rights we're holding for the programs that we are commissioning, co-producing, and acquiring for the platform. So it's an elderly audience on one hand, like all the traditional broadcaster, moving and transforming ourselves to the new way of consuming television and content throughout an online TV platform.
Speaking of that, as a head of drama, what are the projects that you are looking for?
That's the toughest question ever. And then usually we answer by we're not looking for anything specific, which is a weird way to answer. But it's true. We're not commissioning as the English-speaking world is doing. So we try to stay very open-minded in terms of, and our job mainly is to scout talents and writers and authors with a strong vision, with something very particular to tell about the world we're living in. Either prestigious one coming from the artistic world, either a new talent, which is really one of our mission as well as a public service, is to bring new people to the game. We have a small slate. We are a tiny public service compared to the big ones, to France Television or ZDF and ARTE in Germany, or the big ones. But it's a nice game we're playing to be different, to step aside, to try to be more audacious and take more risk. So I think taking risk is definitely an asset for us. We don't have to be super popular, just to be accessible and try to do the best in terms of quality. And definitely find people, again, with a strong vision. Really, this is the big thing. So, for instance, we did a series in the past called Jeu d'influence. I think it was Game of Interest or Game of Influence in English, and it was really about the political world and the lobbyists, and talk about environment and pesticide. So I think it was how to look at the lobbying game in Europe and try to decrypt their way of doing things. So that was one side. We are just finishing post-production of another series called A Life Worth, which is about a Swedish UN battalion going into Bosnia in '93. So it's not really popular, but I think it is essential. It is a story that must be told, especially in the way in the times we're living in. And the last example would be, it was the grand jury of Series Mania last week. It's called Rematch, and it's about AI in a way. And it's Garry Kasparov fighting against the Deep Blue IBM computer. So we lost the game. Humankind lost about artificial intelligence, but I think it is a way to say this is a story that happens 30 years ago, and we have to move to something different.
Okay, so exactly on this, how do you read the context for broadcast now and for filmmakers, etc.? What are the biggest challenges around us? Those who write or broadcast stories.
Yeah, many challenges. They have to have a new storytelling adapted to a younger audience. So this is definitely something we're looking for the platform. They have to deal with so many thematics. So we talked about the groundswell, the big waves of environment, climate change, the world of tomorrow, definitely. This is one side. I think AI is another groundswell. So we're going to live in what we call the cross-sea environment, which is difficult and uncomfortable. So probably it is one of the solutions for us is to be agile and to be very free of mind, which is the environment ARTE is offering. So we have editorially all the liberty to do what we want to do and to tackle any kind of interest. So sometimes it's giving an author, a creator, the ability to think and do by herself. So one of the last examples is Judith Godrèche, with whom we worked for many years on a series called Icon of French Cinema. And the series went on air on ARTE with some success and press coverage, but what is really interesting is what she did with it afterwards. Something way behind ARTE and the French environment. It was really giving a new voice to a Me Too environment in the cinema and on TV. And I think this is a great expectation for us as well, is how a program became something of impact.
But that was beyond your control. This is not something that...
Exactly. It was totally beyond our control. But I think it is a way to assume our responsibility as well, is being the first step of it.
That was going to be my last question, because when we prepare for this event, you said, we have to be cautious, we want to be neutral, we do not want to radicalize too much about what we say. But is it still possible in the the context we're in, to stay neutral?
I'm not sure we're neutral. I think we are politically engaged in the political definition of how to live in society. So in that sense, we have, and by bringing authors with a strong vision, definitely we assume that we are taking that responsibility. When we talked about that, I think we don't want to. We live in a very radicalized world with strong polarities, and we don't want to play with fire, but we try to bring nuances in a very complex world, which is changing very fast. So this is our aim, to bring content that are very in coherence, in resonance with the present days, with the contemporary world, and most of it is really that, bring nuances, try to bring new arguments, give the floor to everyone, and raise conscience for the new world we all dream about.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Very interesting to both of you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry, I have my clock who's saying. Thank you so much.